In 1814, a river engineer named Theodore Burr stood on the banks of the Schoharie River and watched a stone bridge collapse under springtime floodwaters. The bridge had been built with the best engineering knowledge available at the time. It was reinforced, it was strong, and it failed anyway. Burr stared at the rubble and realized something fundamental. Modern engineering was fighting nature instead of working with it. What if he thought a bridge didn't need concrete or steel to stand for 300 years? What if the secret was something the frontier had known all along? The bridge collapse changed everything. Burr went on to design and build structures that didn't just survive centuries of abuse. They outlived the engineers who built them. His bridges were composed of nothing but wood, stone, and principles so simple that it had been hiding in plain sight for 1,000 years. Today, some of those bridges still stand, and modern engineers still don't fully understand why. Your bridge is crumbling right now, maybe not the one you cross, but the infrastructure around you is deteriorating at a rate that shocks most people. A typical modern bridge lasts about 50 to 70 years before it needs major repairs or replacement. Engineers calculate this lifespan into every project. They know that rust will consume their steel. They know that salt air will crumble their concrete. They build with expiration dates built in. But 300 years ago, on the American frontier, engineers were building bridges that have now stood for 3 centuries with almost no maintenance. How did they do this? The answer tells you something dangerous about the way we design and build today. The secret wasn't strength. It wasn't material science or advanced calculation. The frontier engineers didn't have computers or stress testing software or finite elements analysis. They had something much simpler. They understood the invisible forces that destroy structures. They understood water. They understood how forces move through materials, and they built not to resist those forces, but to redirect them. A bridge fails because of tension and compression. When a load presses down on a bridge, the materials experience 2 opposing stresses. The top of a bridge beam experiences compression, the material is being crushed. The bottom experiences tension. It's being pulled apart. Most modern bridges address this by making the materials stronger. They had reinforcing steel. They use high-grade concrete. They are trying to be stronger than the forces acting on them. But the frontier engineers realized something different. If you arrange your structure the right way, you don't need to be stronger than the forces. You can make the forces work for you. This is where a man named James Pine enters the story. Pine was an English bridge architect who lived from 1717 to 1789, and he became obsessed with one question: why do arch bridges last so much longer than beam bridges? He studied Roman aqueducts that had stood for 2,000 years. He examined medieval stone bridges that had survived centuries of floods and wars and earthquakes. He watched modern beam bridges fail under loads that should have been well within their capability. And he started to understand the arch. An arch bridge doesn't fight the weight pressing down on it. Instead, the arch curves in such a way that all the weight gets converted into a sideways force, pushing outward towards the supports on either end. The curve of the arch takes the tension, the pulling apart force, and converts it into compression, which is a pushing force. And unlike tension, which can suddenly snap materials apart, compressions actually makes most materials stronger. A stone under compression becomes more solid. The blocks lock together more tightly. The structure becomes stronger, not weaker. But here's what's remarkable. On the frontier, engineers pushed this principle even further. They didn't just build with arches. They combined arch principles with the wooden construction in ways that shouldn't have worked, but did. A man named Theodore Burr, the same man who watched that bridge collapse in 1814, began using what's called the Burr Arch Truss. It was a design that combined a wooden arch with a wooden truss. The arch handled most of the weight by converting it into sideways pressure. The truss provided backup support. Together they created redundancy. If one system failed, the other would catch it. The Burr Arch Truss wasn't Burr's only insight though. He understood that material matters, but not in the way modern engineers think. He knew that different woods have different properties. He knew that wood from trees that grew slowly in cold climates was denser and stronger than wood from fast-growing trees. He knew that the way you cut the wood mattered. He knew that the angle of the grain affected how the wood responded to stress. He knew that the angle of the grain affected how the wood responded to stress. In other words, he understood the material at a level that only comes from working with it, studying it, failing with it, and learning from those failures. The frontier also taught its engineers something about water that modern hydraulic engineering is only now relearning. Water doesn't just push straight down on a bridge. It swirls and eddies. It creates vortices. It exerts pressure from unexpected angles. A bridge that's rigid and unyielding fights these forces head on. especially one built on a principle of redistribution rather than resistance, can move slightly with the water, can let the water flow around it, can actually become stronger the water tries to destroy it. Consider the covered bridges that still stand throughout New England and the Middle Atlantic states. Most were built between 1820 and 1900. Many have now survived for nearly 200 years. Some are still in active use. Engineers studying these bridges have found that their longevity comes from these factors that modern engineering has largely abandoned. The first is simplicity. A covered bridge isn't complicated. Its geometry is straightforward. There are no hidden stresses, no places where invisible tension can accumulate. Everything is visible and understandable. The second is redundancy. If you remove any single component, the bridge doesn't collapse. The load just redistributes through the other parts. This is almost the opposite of modern bridge design, where efficiency is valued over resilience. In modern design, you remove anything unnecessary. In frontier design, redundancy itself was the necessity. And the third factor is material choice. The wood used in these bridges was selected and treated in ways that modern forestry doesn't prioritize. The timber was often left to season for years before use. The best pieces were selected for the most critical components. Regular maintenance was planned for, and those maintenance practices were documented and passed down. A bridge built this way doesn't become obsolete. It doesn't have an expected lifespan of 50 years baked into its design. Instead, it's built with the assumption that will be maintained, that future generations will understand how to repair it, and that with proper care, it could stand indefinitely. This is a fundamentally different philosophy. Modern engineering assumes that structures have finite lifespans. Frontier engineering assumed that structures, if built right, could be eternal. There's a bridge in Vermont called the Windsor-Cornish Bridge, completed in 1796. It's the longest covered bridge in the United States at 460 feet. It was designed by a man named Solomon Weintraub, and he built it using the Burr Arch principles. It crosses the Connecticut River, a waterway that can be violent during spring floods. Over more than 200 years, this bridge has survived countless floods, multiple fires, and the kind of traffic and wear that would have destroyed most structures centuries ago. It's still in use today. Modern engineers have studied this bridge extensively, trying to understand why it works so well. Their conclusion is always the same: it shouldn't still be standing. The reason often comes down to something simple: the joints. Modern bridges are built with massive structural components connected by bolts, welds, and precise mechanical connections. If any of these connections fails, the bridge fails. Frontier bridges were built with hand-cut joints. A mortise and tenon joint in an old bridge wasn't about precision in the modern sense. It was built by eye, by hand, with an understanding of wood grain and stress. These joints could flex slightly. They could move with the wood as it expanded and contracted with temperature and humidity. They could accommodate settling and shifting. A modern riveted connection is rigid and brittle. A hand-cut joint in old wood is flexible and forgiving. The other factor is something that modern material science is only beginning to appreciate: the properties of old wood. Wood doesn't decay at a constant rate. If conditions are right, wood can actually become harder and stronger over time. In some of the oldest bridges, the wood has turned almost stone-like. It's become so dense that it can resist impacts that would shatter newer wood. This happens in dry conditions, under certain humidity regimes, and when the wood is protected from the elements by a good roof or a regular maintenance. The covered bridges were covered for precisely this reason. The roof protected the interior timbers from weather. This is why so many covered bridges have survived so long. The cover itself is the preservation system. So why did we stop building this way? The answer is economics and speed. Modern bridges can be built faster and more cheaply, at least in the short term. Modern materials like concrete and steel allow for larger spans and more impressive engineering feats. A skyscraper made of wood would be impractical with current technology and code requirements. But for most applications, especially the smaller bridges and structures that actually makes up most of our infrastructure, the frontier approach might actually be superior. And here's what's truly striking: there's a growing movement of engineers and builders who are relearning these principles. They are studying old bridges, they are testing old wood, they are experimenting with redundancy over efficiency, with flexibility over rigidity, with material understanding over computational modeling. They are finding that the frontier engineers, with their limited tools and their deep practical knowledge, solved problems that modern engineering hasn't fully solved yet. A bridge lasts because it was built with redundancy. so that failure in one part doesn't mean failure of the whole. A bridge lasts because it was built with materials that were understood deeply, used carefully, and maintained faithfully. A bridge lasts because it was built not to conquer nature, but to cooperate with it. When Theodore Burr stood on the banks of the Schoharie River and watched that bridge collapse, he learned that engineering wasn't about being stronger than the forces acting against you. It was about understanding those forces so deeply that you could build in a way that made those forces less destructive. He didn't need concrete. He didn't need steel. He needed understanding. And 300 years later, some of the structures he designed are still doing exactly what he intended. Standing, carrying loads, surviving what modern engineering said should have destroyed them long ago. Your bridge is crumbling, and it's being rebuilt the same way the last one was built. With an expiration date in mind, but somewhere in the American frontier, a covered bridge still stands, still carries traffic, still proves that there's another way.